This is Breaking the Line, the ECNL podcast featuring ECNL President and CEO Christian Lavers and ECNL Vice President and Chief of Staff Doug Bracken. Today, a special guest tied to a special announcement. The guest, Mark Thompson from the Everton International Academy. Why? Well, the first ever ECNL International Tournament powered by Coach's Voice and in association with Everton International Academy will be held in Europe, and top-performing ECNL boys and ECNL girls teams travel to the United Kingdom in May of 2026 to compete against Premier League and Women's Super League Academy teams at Everton FC's world-class first-team training facilities. There's so much more to learn about. There's so much more to talk about. But let's let Christian, Doug, and Mark Thompson do that now. Take it away, Christian.
Well, appreciate the introduction as always from Mr. Dean Linke. And here we are, Mr. Bracken, back again.
Yes, we are. Always a pleasure to be here and have a guest today, which is nice because
an esteemed guest.
We do because I've had to just talk to you solo pretty much for the last month, which has its benefits, and I don't know.
You can say there's some downsides to that. But
Downsides.
It's always positive when we can bring in an English accent to the podcast.
Wow. Yes.
Bring somebody who's been working at some level, has worked on both sides of the pond, as they say it. So welcome to Mark Thompson.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
We should say that Mark is with the Everton International Academy.
Yes.
In England, and has worked. How long have you been with Everton now, Mark?
Just over a year full time, but I've worked the last 3 summers, as well as just as an international coach, working across a variety of sectors, mainly on summer camps and clinics over in the US.
Love it.
So, Everton is rapidly becoming our favorite Premier League club, I think is fair to say. We had a wonderful trip over there, some good hospitality from Mark and his team a few weeks ago, and obviously the big announcement of the inaugural ECNL International Tournament powered by the Coach's Voice in association with Everton International Academy, and going to be a really, really cool event for 4 ECNL boys teams, 4 ECNL girls teams. Mark was instrumental in setting that event up. So Mark, why don't we start actually with you giving a little bit of background about yourself, and then we'll go into how did this event come about?
Yeah, sure. I'm really not that much of an interesting person, so I'll keep it short and snappy. I had
you got to work on your elevator speech.
You do.
I had a short career, sort of young youth team at professional club, 11 all the way up to 19. Went into non-league football, which is very much part-time, and got to around 30 and the knee started to ache and creak a little bit, and I started to explore coaching. Wasn't sure whether I'd like it or not. And off the back of actually a relative getting involved at a professional club at a young age, I decided to sort of offer my services as a volunteer. And then within 5 years, I was sort of up to my neck in academy football, coaching courses, qualifications, learning. And loved it, if I'm honest. Absolutely loved it. And then I had got the offer of a full-time role in football at a League One club, which was great. Small club, variety of roles, anything from the U19s all the way down to the U7s and the U8s. Real small core member of staff, cluster of staff. So we did a lot of jobs across the board.
What club was that?
Within the academy? That was Peterborough United. Sir Alex Ferguson's son Darren's been the manager there for quite a long while now. He's a bit of a legend there. So I was there for a period, and then left there for a couple of different reasons. Wanted to try and progress within my career as well, and that led me to making regular trips across the pond. And I was doing that on and off for about 5 years. Then I ended up through COVID. COVID struck a little bit, and obviously we're not allowed to travel. So I actually transitioned from a part-time role into a full-time role at a local club, which is National League. So that's basically like league, the fourth division now. I was a technical director there, under 19s coach. So we had a really good run in the FA Youth Cup. And then, yeah, coming out of COVID, I got the opportunity to explore a role over in the US, which I took and led me to be coaching within the ECNL platform for a period, which was thoroughly enjoyable. And fast forward 3 years, and here I am back at Everton Football Club, working very fortunately for a Premier League club.
Oh, a winding road it is. I mean, we'll probably
Very
talk
much.
talk more about your experience coaching here a little bit later. So let's use this as a pivot, maybe, Doug, to how did this tournament come about? Obviously, you had coached in America, so we had some awareness of the ECNL before you moved back to England. What was it that created this opportunity, and then how do we get this across the line? Because something like this has never happened before, as at least as far as we understand.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as I got the role, basically to head up the international side, I remember speaking to Magnus actually at the coach's voice, and he was like, "Oh, how's things going?" And I said, "You know what? I'd love to do a really big international tournament and get the top girls players over, top boys players over, and just let everybody see from both sides of the pond what each level's like." So then I think I think you guys had some conversations, and then before you know it, he's like, "Well, we can do it." So I was like, "Okay, great. What do we need to do?" Um, so then obviously I was thrown my hand to go and try and facilitate, which the club are incredibly motivated and really keen to get this across the line, because it's great exposure for the players as well, right? It's different competition, it's different level of competition, it's different type of competition, and ultimately it's tournament football. So I something that they were really keen on. So yeah, once we managed to sort of dot the I's and cross the T's, we had the great fortune of hosting you guys to look around the facility, and I think we solidified some of that at the table in the canteen, sat with some of the staff.
Yeah, it's going to be an unbelievable event. I mean, it's like we said, four boys, four girls from the ECNL. They know who they are. They're in the process of planning and booking travel, and you're in the process of finalizing the tournament participants. There'll be an announcement on that here in the coming months. For May, the event will be in May 2026. But what we look at this like is it's going to be a comparison and a nice competition between some of the best players and teams in America, with some of the most storied academies and professional developers of talent in England on the men's and the women's side, and that's the on-field piece. And then, as anyone who knows who's gone abroad, especially in England, but anywhere abroad, and played soccer and done a soccer trip, there it is a transformational experience in terms of just being immersed in a country where soccer, football is everything in sport. And that's not been left out in this event. So we'll have some unbelievable opportunities for the players on the field, some unbelievable opportunities off the field. Obviously, you worked with Magnus in putting this together. What were your driving thoughts and how to make this a special event, both on the field and off the field?
I think there's a few different areas within it, Christian, to be honest. I probably shared this story with you, but I'll keep it short. But I've got a friend who was at a academy as a youngster, and and he got released, as everybody tends to do. And he talks about his experience, and all he ever talks about, he used to always tell me about a tour they had to Sweden, the year after they went to Norway, the year after they went to Spain, and he always talked about the fondness of those life experiences. And I think certainly in professional football in England, and in Europe, most of the time, kids' dreams come to an end at some point, whether that's as an 11-year-old, as they get released and they go off and play grassroots, or whether it's, a 21-year-old doesn't get another contract. But I think it's really key that they get good memories and good life experiences from that. So I think those are huge factors within this, as you've touched upon the cultural side of it and the life lessons of travel and different experiences within different cultures. And I think that's a huge part of it. So I think that is a massive takeaway certainly from the guys traveling over to the UK. And I think for the teams in the UK playing the American teams, like I hope they get very, very pleasantly surprised with the level of play, and I'm sure they will. And so I think it's eye-opening for both and on different levels, on the pitch and off the pitch. So yeah, so when we had the opportunity to put this together, we were super keen for a variety of reasons.
I just turned around because when I was a U16, I have a little pennant here of the Reebok Canary Cup hosted by Norwich City in 1992
Oh
that
wow.
I remember going to play in. And to your point about the memories of playing and then meeting for a meal with the teams afterwards that you competed against, and then the tourism, both soccer and historical. I think it's a life-changing experience for a kid to get, and we're super excited to be able to offer that experience and support that experience for the teams on our end. Doug, I know you've been to Europe more than me, actually, from a soccer
Yeah,
perspective in terms of travel. You're a bit of a soccer nomad when it comes to going to see games and
yes,
experiencing international soccer.
yeah, definitely. During my early adult years, I would just go and travel around. My question I wanted to ask you, Mark, is what do you think the perception of uh, the teams that may from the English side that may participate is of the American players and teams that'll come?
Um, as I say, I think they will be surprised at the level, um, because they might not know of the platform, right? They might not know of the ECNL unless you know American soccer. I don't, you're not that well versed in the levels and the platforms that are available. And if you do know that, you know the level of playing the ECNL, right? So I think that will surprise them. And again, I would hope on the female side, um, that the teams that are coming over will be incredibly strong, compared to I won't say compared to the female teams that we're going to be putting out there, because you're going to be talking about, hopefully some of the best teams in the country. But um, female soccer seems far more established, in the US than it is in the UK. I think obviously the success that the national teams had over the last few years has helped with that, and certainly helped with awareness around soccer, and I think there's more interest than ever than on the girls' side. So I'm really looking forward to the girls' side of the tournament, to be quite honest with you. And from a football club perspective, I know the owners, who are obviously Texas-based, they're super keen on investing on the women and girls side. Obviously with the use of Goodison Park for the ladies team. So I think it's going to be good. It's going to be a good spectacle, and it's be a good opportunity to, again, as you say, raise awareness and open eyes of the level of play that's participated in over in the US. So yeah, I think I think it's going to be really good. I'm so excited.
I think there's going to be a surprise on both sides, to be honest. I think, if we speak stereotypically, as you said, the American game on the women's side is perceived to be, much advanced than most countries in the world. Although,
Mm.
as has also been much discussed, the gap is closing, and as it should, as countries develop more, invest more, and take it more seriously, no matter what we do, the gap will close, to some degree. But on the men's side as well, I think there'll be some surprise from the English teams about what the quality of the American male player is, because we think that has dramatically improved over the last 10, 15, 20 years. But I think the women's side may be surprised by some of the quality that's in England, because that has grown significantly over the last maybe shorter time period, 5, 10 years. But my hope is that there's a little bit of surprise on both sides, and we end up with a really something that we hope is going to be, an ongoing relationship where we can share information. And I should say it'll go more than just the players, and the opportunity to meet, peers, friends, competitors from a different country, but also for coaching staff to get to know each other and to talk and share our thoughts and differences between the American game and the English game. What do you think about that? I mean, you coached here for a while, a short part of your career compared to your time in England. But what is your thought about the American game as a whole when you compare it to the English youth game?
Yeah, great question. I think when I went into the role that I was in the US, it was very much to sort of lay some foundations around technical proficiency at a younger age. I know we spoke a little bit about that when you guys were over. Certainly me and Doug chatted about that. So I think that is an area that's, I wouldn't say lacking, but it probably needs some attention. Just getting, the kids more technically proficient at a younger age to aid the development as they get older. And I think that's a real challenge. And I think it's a bit of an educational thing, because parents and players like to compete way more. They see the benefit of competing in terms of getting against each other, being aggressive, working hard, in the US than in England. If you try to put a technical session on with kids in England, they would understand the reasoning behind that a little bit quicker than they would, in my opinion, from my experiences, than you would the kids in the US. I think they think if they're not, in 1v1 battles or being aggressive and being hardworking, that they're not learning. So I think that's like a bit of a cultural shift which comes within clubs and leadership within clubs to make sure there's a balance there of making sure you're technically capable, but also a willingness to compete and work hard and be competitive. That's what I saw as the biggest hurdle. If I was being honest.
So when you say technical session, and
Yeah.
and if I hear you correctly saying you would believe the average English player is more willing, interested, focused potentially in a technical session than an
Yeah.
average American player. What do you mean by technical session? Are you talking about like unopposed technique, or are you talking about a
Yeah.
session that's focused more just on technical execution versus decision making? What do you mean specifically?
I would say, yeah, the technique and the unopposed technical work, in terms of passing patterns, unopposed practices that don't focus on decision making. They focus on the technique of doing the action, and executing the action rather than doing it with pressure. I found that it was always tough to try and drive the interest within the players when they weren't either whether they were executing decisions or whether they were in a game scenario. I always found that a little bit challenging. So yeah, I would definitely say unopposed technique work, slower work, less sort of intensity within the work.
So that's a topic of debate all over the place, right? Of how much unopposed technical work to do, and it probably varies by club. When you look at the teams in England, and maybe you can speak specifically from Everton, or maybe more generally, what percentage of the training time is spent doing that, and maybe pick a couple different age groups, because obviously it'll change from U8 to U18.
Yeah, sure. Certainly in the foundation phase, which is sort of U8s to U12, I would say 50% of their work would be across a week would be technical proficiency. Not all unopposed, maybe some semi-opposed, but a lot of it would be very much around the technique of the action that you're trying to execute. As you get older, maybe into the youth development phase, which is what, 12 to 16, I would say that probably drops to around 30% of the session would be technical. Then you're going into some competitive stuff, some opposed work, and then you're probably going to go into small-sided games with restrictions and conditions and stuff like that. So yeah, certainly at the younger age, there's a higher emphasis on the unopposed technical work.
Doug, I would say that is a higher percentage of time than in most clubs here. Although, you may have a different percentage even in Germany or Spain based on philosophical differences as well on that. But what would be your guess in those if we break it down 12 and down here and then 13 to 16?
I mean, it's probably going to vary wildly from club to club, isn't it? Depending on what the person in charge or values. So I think it'd be hard to say. I mean, you're spending a lot of time right now in that phase. I did it particularly when I first started coaching in youth club soccer. I worked with some younger age groups, and we spent a lot of time on technical work. I don't know if it was 50%, but it was a lot. I don't know what do you think, Christian? I mean, you're out there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't my guess, and somebody's going to come yelling about how they do it differently, but I don't see many environments where 50% of the time is doing that. I was thinking about this the other day, and in preparation for some other discussions about youth development. About I think one of the challenges in those age groups is once you establish the understanding of the biomechanic piece, is actually continuing to correct it and focus on it within some type of competitive environment, right? Which I think is a real weak area of coaching. It's one thing to teach biomechanics and ball manipulation and that sort of stuff without pressure, but then how do you actually continue to reinforce correct execution when you add opposition and you add decision making, which is a tough one. But it kind of it brings into comparison also the differences in just the whole youth setup
Well,
between England and the
yeah,
US.
I mean, one of the questions I was going to ask Mark was, what are, I think, the priorities maybe in the setup in England? Because a lot of what we're talking about, Mark, right, is professional clubs, and their priorities in player development may be different. I'm not saying they should be different, but they are probably different than maybe what the priorities of a youth soccer club here in the United States that has no direct connection to professional. Can you talk about that a little bit? You've seen both sides of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I mean, the academy work around the brilliant basics, and as I spoke to Christian, we're going to be delivering at the convention this year, and the assistant head of academy coaching is going to be coming over with me and delivering a session around some of the brilliant basics around U10 age group. And he's going to be doing a lecture around what they look like at the club as well, and how they differ from age to age, and how they evolve as it goes from foundation phase up to the youth development phase. So that's going to be a really interesting piece of work if people are there and they want to hop along and see what we do. But I'd say the main proficiencies are passing and receiving, ball mastery, 1v1 duels with pressure from the front, from the side, from the back, and then into small-sided games on ball striking. So there's probably 3 or 4 real key components at the younger age groups that are a big priority. Now, they should all be a priority. Because everybody at every club, whether it's a professional club, a pay-to-play club in the US in terms of an ECNL club, or whether it's a rec club, that kids are just there playing for the fun of it. There's all a piece of long-term development focus around all of that. So I think there should always be the focus of what's best for the child and the children within the environment of learning and enjoyment, right? So it's a real balance, as we all know. But I think there should always be a focus of long-term development within the individual, within whatever we do and whatever level.
But when you let me ask you this: when you were at, let's say, Peterborough United, right, at that level, would you say that you guys were driven by developing players for the first team? Was that your primary motivation?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, get them into the youth team, get them a youth team contract, and then get them onto the first team, and they were really good at that. I mean, there was kids. There was a kid who was in one of my groups for a few years. He then moved on. He made his debut at 15. He then got sold to Sheffield United for 2.4 million, something like that. But his journey looked a lot different to somebody that, was probably technically better than him. He was probably more physically capable. So it's I think at professional clubs, it's all about assets and getting these people into the first team, or certainly giving them careers. I think that's something that Everton are very, very proud of, is their goal is to set them up to get into the first team if possible. But if not, let them have a career, enable them to go and have a career within football, whatever level that is. And I was given a stat that we'd just overtaken Man City actually to be the 4th or 5th most productive academy in the country in terms of players going on and having careers. So yeah,
Can I ask a question on that, Mark? Because I thought I had a conversation. I can't remember with who, but when you talk about like let's say U16, U17, and I think at some point we should explore the age at which recruitment changes in England, right? Because
Yeah.
there's an age where you're limited geographically, and then an age it opens up. But um, if you look at like an FA Youth Cup,
Yeah.
there are competitions in which these academies say this is more about performance and winning, and they may be a much smaller piece of the competitive calendar. But can you talk about those that because I think that's actually an interesting um, uh, target maybe for us, Doug, is for clubs to understand really there are certain competitions you go and it is about playing to win, and there are certain competitions that are far more developmentally focused. We are probably very skewed in this country at a young age, which is the biggest issue. But where and when do academies say, hey, this is something that we are going to try and play and win to this competition?
That's certainly changed and altered over the years. There was a time where there was no competitive leagues um, in professional academies up until you got into the youth team, which was U17 and up. Um, but I think they saw gaps within that in terms of development and in terms of desire to win, what it means to win and lose, and probably kids were going away thinking, "Oh, it's okay, we've lost, no worries, no league, so it doesn't matter." So I think they saw gaps within that, and then they got to U16, and then they added in a U16 league because they're closer to the youth team. They then went to under 15s and they added in an under 15. So I don't know I don't know for definite, but there's definitely league structure at 15 and 16 within academies now. Might even be 14. Um, but to supplement that, what teams would do or what academies would do would they'd go and try and play in festivals and just one-off tournaments that they could go and enter against top grassroots teams, or even maybe some academies would do that within themselves to add that element of competition and figure out what it's like to win and lose. And I know kids that have been in an academy since the age of 8, gone all the way up to 16. They've never won a trophy. Never known what it's like to win a cup or a league because they've never been in any. Um, so I think they recognise that, and that's now a lot younger. I think there's fors and against for both. I think in long-term development, it, it's a byproduct. One's a byproduct of the other. For me, if you learn and develop well at younger age, you're going to see the fruits of your labour as the kids get older and they develop. So they're going to win more games. And I think if we're talking about the winning and losing over the development piece, I think that's something that will rumble on forever. But as I say, I think if you're doing things right, structurally within a framework at the younger age groups, then your team should be successful because you're teaching the kids, or you're setting the kids up for success because you're enabling them to be proficient and competitive as they move through the ages.
So what is the age at which maybe you can outline the academy recruitment policies that are in England, and the geographic restrictions that end at what age or expand at what age? How does that work?
Yeah, I think it's got a little bit tougher with the Brexit. But I'm pretty sure at 18, kids are eligible to be signed on professional deals. I couldn't sit here and tell you that the definitives behind that because I wouldn't want to give you wrong information. But again, if kids are on dual passports or they're eligible to sign passport wise, they can be signed at any age. So yeah, I wouldn't want to give you information that was wrong. So I want to be a little bit non-committal on that one, if I'm honest.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think the perception has been in our country, and this goes back to people who used to coach like U.S. youth regional teams, which pick the best kids in theory within a region of the country of, 8, 12 states, something like that, 15 states, depending on the region. That the American, and I'll speak on the male side, the American player at U14, U15 measures up pretty well in competition with a foreign academy, but that rapidly starts to change at age 16, 15, 16, 17, somewhere in there. There's a big gap that opens up that is not there at U14. At least that's been the perception for a while. Doug, would you agree with that?
Yeah, that's right.
And It's probably easy to point. I think somewhere around that point, the foreign academies can recruit outside of their smaller geographic area, and that I think impacts some of the player pool. But the bigger issue is somewhere around that age, the American player continues to train 2 to 3 times a week, mostly age appropriate, and the aspiring English or European player is now training 6, 7 times a week with players older than them on a regular basis if they are capable. Um, but that creates a gap that really then we struggle to close as a country when it changes. Would you agree with that assessment, Mark?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that's one of the challenges, certainly in the younger age groups that I found in the US, is there's just so much choice for the kids in terms of sports. I think for kids in England, they like, especially boys, they just gonna always commit to football first, and they're gonna, parents are driven to try and help their children be successful. So I do think we've got a bit of a leg up there because there's not much else to choose. Um, so kids do play 5, 6 times a week. I know the guys at the academy, they train 4 nights a week, and they play games at a weekend. Um, so yeah, there is a lot. Yeah, there is a lot more focus, I think, and I think, as I say, I think the choice of sports and other avenues isn't so vast over here. Um, I guess, is that something that you guys struggle with in terms of a challenge with older age groups, or is that younger?
I think I mean, you can answer too on this, Doug. I think it's younger for sure. I think by the time they get to 14, 15, most top players have decided that this is where they want to focus. And I do think that one of the evolutions of clubs over the last 10 years, 15 years, has been to try and meet the needs of those players more. I mean, if 15 years ago, probably 2 trainings a week was generally the standard for a lot of people. Three was for the committed the player. Now I think 3 is the standard and 4 is for the really, committed, high aspiring player. So I think clubs here have evolved to try and address some of those needs. Doug, what do you think?
Yeah, I'd say so. I would say there's probably a more socioeconomic realities here. Obviously, we talked about this when we were there. You can fit 77 UKs in the United States just from a land mass geographic perspective, right? So it's, quite a bit smaller and more concentrated and therefore probably easier to coordinate some of the stuff that you guys do. But also, I think there are some socioeconomic differences for the players, at the entry point here than there are in England. I think, probably that's a reality. So maybe our population is, obviously a lot bigger. So we have a lot more to choose from the starting point if we can get them than you do. But I think maybe to your point, you counteract that by soccer being the first thing or football being the first thing that kids think about when they think about playing sport in the UK. So so yeah, I agreed with you, Christian, that to the point that we can control it, we have tried to address some of that you talked about. But I just think there's some coordination realities, some socioeconomic realities probably here.
Well, I want to touch on that a little bit. I mean, Mark, in the US, where you were a part of a pay-to-play club where the parents pay, and that price, as we've talked in previous podcasts, it's not cheap, but it's also not cheap to have somebody give a lot of their time, and especially somebody with experience and whatever. And then if you compare that to let's pick an age group. Let's say U15. A comparison of a U15 pay to play American club with the parent as a customer and a U15 professional academy team, which certainly there's no charge in England if you're on their team. And there may be players in there who are being paid already at U15 in some regard. How does that impact the environment of the coach and of the player?
I think it takes away the challenge of the level of play, right? It's not just the people that can afford it. that play the game. You're truly getting the talent that, or the best talent around that wants to play the game. Obviously we're fortunate enough not to have that issue. So it's truly, as you say, the kids don't pay to play within academy football. They're
Well,
invited.
how does it affect the ability of the coach? You know, because you're right. I mean, obviously, the second you eliminate an economic barrier, you're going to have more people able to play.
Mm.
Um, now we can talk and debate about where does that problem start in the U.S. And I think it's, as most things, it's much more complicated. But when you talk about, I guess what I'm teasing at here is when you talk about focusing on technical sessions or the commitment of the player in the technical session, is that also partially driven by the fact that these guys do legitimately aspire to be pros, some of whom might be already paid
Yeah.
to some level, and they look at it just more seriously?
Yeah, there's no want for desire. They bounce into the building and they bounce out because they want to be there, and they want to give everything to follow their dream. So there's no challenge there in terms of motivation for the kids and yeah, opportunity that they see. So I think it's always easier for the coach if you've got a group of kids there that are completely motivated to take in anything that you're going to throw at them. That certainly always makes the coach's life a little bit easier. But on the flip side of that, sometimes as a coach, if you've got, a more challenging group that might lack a little bit of motivation or their concentration wanes and wanders, you've got to find a way to keep them engaged, right? So I think there's two different ways of looking at that. I think it certainly helps the English sides for sure.
England, particularly in the last, let's say, and this is just your opinion on this, in let's say the last 20, 25 years, have pretty consistently developed world-class players, right? Where we would say the US probably we haven't on the guys' side done that. What would you attribute that to?
I do think it's down to the options that these kids have available in terms of other sports. When we give an example, when we moved over, my little boy was, I don't know, 9, 10, and he all he wanted to do was to try baseball and basketball and NFL and see what it was like. He's like, he gets enough of football at home. So I do think that is a big factor within it. Um, but as you say, there's a lot of factors that are away from the pitch that make things challenging. So I do think the fact that we have a lack of other options for kids, it sends them straight towards football, unfortunately, peer pressure and kids challenging each other continuously. I guess it just drives the level, doesn't it?
Well, I'll add to that from an outside perspective because I've answered that question to some degree, Doug, with the a look at culture. Because, and you see this, as cliche as it is when you watch the documentaries of clubs that now abound, right? About clubs, whether it's Wrexham or Birmingham or any of the Prime series. But, when you see these people, these supporters, these families that so much of their life is wrapped around their support of the football club. And, mom, dad, brother, whoever, they all played. And you compare that cultural saturation with an American youth player, to your point, where there is not as much of a family history of supporting a professional club, much less being involved in the sport to any significant degree. And then you add the variety of other sports and activities that are generally available to an average American kid. It does create a very different feel around the sport. It's part of the reason why going on an international trip is such an unbelievable experience for American soccer players who love soccer because they are for the first time immersed in a culture that lives and breathes it every day. And I don't want to speak in too much grandeur, obviously, but it's just a different feel for those kids. And I think that does impact the approach to the game, the understanding at an early level of what the game is and could be, And then yeah, the choices here, maybe a chicken and the egg issue as well when it comes to the choices here in terms of what makes the other choices more exciting. Is it that they're there, or is it that there's less of a an emotional and historical connection to one sport?
I mean, I would say that's for sure true. Yeah. That was one of the things I experienced again when I started going over, and I would come over, Mark, just by myself and travel around for whatever, 3 weeks or a month and go to games as much as I could. And back then, just kind of aging me, but you could go to training. Like you could go in and sit in, watch training, or call somebody you knew who knew somebody who could get you into training, right?
Not so
So
many gates back
no,
then.
yeah, no,
Gates
that's
and
yeah,
permits and
yes, and yeah,
QR codes.
fingerprints and QR codes. Yeah, that's right. So, but just to see that culture, I spent some time, particularly like in Newcastle, one time, and I just went to training and saw some youth teams train during the week in the lead up to them playing, at St. James's Park on the weekend, and just to see that kind of how that just energy ramped up around the city, and then the game, and then that kind of thing. So I do think for sure, Christian, it's like that. I mean, the only thing I can compare it to here is like college football. Like
Yeah,
it's kind of the only thing that I can compare it to is it's college football. It's just kind of a you know,
cultural. It's
yeah,
cultural.
it's cultural,
Yeah.
100%.
Did you get that sense when you came to Finch Farm?
What's that?
Did you get that feel and that sense of the
It,
culture when you
it
came to Finch?
yes, but it feels much more corporate, if for lack of a better word, than it did then.
Mm.
It felt
Well,
much
that's not
more.
Finch Farm. You're talking
That's
about
not.
these
I'm just
big
saying, generally speaking.
evolution of the game.
Yes,
Yeah.
it felt way more. I don't know if I could say, like, 25 years ago, it just felt like more connected to the, not that it's not connected to the community. It's just hard to explain it.
Yeah.
But it did feel this time, and recent times I've been over, it felt more corporate, like, which there are obviously important reasons for that and all that. So
Yeah.
not questioning that,
Yeah.
but it did feel a lot more loose. And I remember having dinner at a restaurant in Newcastle with my buddy um, um, who was Alan Shearer was there just eating dinner, and nobody was bothering
Yeah.
him. He was just sitting over there. So right.
Yeah.
But yes, I thought the facilities that we saw when we were at Finch Farm, and just the professionalism and how the setup is just really incredible, honestly. Just what is going into trying to help these kids become professional players and follow their dreams, and all the resources that they have available. Unbelievable. So,
Well, and some of I think the corporate structure you're talking about, I thought one of the real positives of let's just call it organizational structure is when we were sitting in the lunch area or the cafeteria, and you see boys, girls, old, young coming through. Obviously, there's really positive things about the nutrition and the education around nutrition that goes into it. But when you talk about just sort of a cultural area for people to see what the future looks like right in front of them, and to eat with or next to somebody who is where they want to be in a year, 2 years, 8 years. I mean, that type of investment and that type of commitment to physical infrastructure, it's only possible in a program. And it goes back all the way back to when you said, I think at Peterborough, when you had a player that did get signed for Sheffield at 2.5 million. I mean, right now, if you're a youth club in America and you have a player that goes to a pro club, I mean, if you get a scarf and $2,000 contribution, you've done well. I mean, it's just there is no money coming down from the pro game into the youth game, which means there is no way to defray all of those costs. I mean, $2.5 million goes a long way in covering infrastructure and creating facilities and paying for time and all that sort of stuff. And I'm not pretending that, that's like a daily occurrence there or anything, but we just don't have the equivalent here.
No,
I was
and I've got a good story on that. There was I had a friend who he played for Crystal Palace, Southampton, and he went into youth coaching. He was actually assistant coach at Exeter. And I remember speaking to him about what their youth setup was like, and how was the academy. And he said, "We've got a kid. I think he was 13 at the time. We've got a kid who was already training with the first team." I was like, "Oh wow!" And he said, "We're going to sell him when he's 15 because they want to go to a higher category. And what they would sell him for would allow them to buy a dome, an indoor dome, which would get them Category 2 status." And it was actually Ethan Ampadu, who now plays for Leeds United captain, went to Chelsea. Chelsea bought him. And he was training with the first team at 13, 14. And apparently he was the best player. He was just unbelievable. But from a business side of it, they'd already mapped out at what point they were going to sell him and what they were already going to use the money for. So in terms of reinvesting into the facilities and the category and the level of education that the next group of players could get. So some players, some clubs, they sell players on to survive. Some do it because they just do. Some do it to improve infrastructure. So yeah, I think each club's got their own story. And I found that really interesting that they already mapped out the business side of that years in advance.
Listen, if we could sell Doug for some type of physical asset, I mean, we would take offers.
You probably wouldn't get a lot.
I mean, I don't know. A dome is expensive.
There's an age where you're doing one step from the glue factory. So I wouldn't put too much on that.
Let me
ask. I wanted to ask Mark this question too, because this is important as it relates to Everton, and we got to see this firsthand. I've been to Goodison Park to see a game. Sat behind a pole. It was unbelievable. It's great. Having moved into the new stadium, which we got to see when we were there, and
unbelievable stadium, an unbelievable location,
unbelievable. What has that done for the club?
I think it's done two different things. I think for the women's side, it's been a huge uplift. They're now playing their games at Goodison Park, and that's their home. I think, if I'm right, I could be wrong, but I think they're the only team to have a full stadium like that as their home, as their actual home venue. I think some of the other ones play at smaller venues. So for that move, the women's side should have elevated unbelievably and given masses of motivation for the female players within the club and within the area, within the city, to see that there's such huge investment and opportunity on the female side now. But on the men's side, I think attendance has gone from 30, 35, 36 to 51, 52, 53. And you've been there yourself, and I was fortunate enough to watch the Tottenham game a couple of weeks ago and to see it full, which was my first trip to the stadium on a game day. Incredible, like absolutely incredible. I think it brings a lot of things. It brings a lot of obviously commercial opportunities. It obviously brings attraction for players. I mean, would you have signed Jack Grealish if they were still at Goodison? Maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't. But to play there and be there every week, I think that certainly upscales the level of player that you might attract. I think it just adds another level of motivation. Imagine being a 10-year-old Evertonian now that could play at Goodison. Now you can play at Hill Dickinson. I'm not saying that they need any extra motivation, but I mean, what a place. You guys were, we were fortunate to spend some time there, and it's unbelievable. So I think on a lot of different levels, it's added a lot to the club. Because at some point you've got to, catch up and be in the modern world, right? And I think that's certainly put the football club, right at the top of that in the country in terms of facility. Because it was crazy. And I mean, I think the club's just hosted the Ashes in rugby, which was a couple of weeks ago, and I think that went down brilliantly. So even that attracting to the area, it's bringing different sports, different opportunities. So yeah, it's phenomenal. And every time you turn, I was there last week for some training, and I just driving in, I'm just keep looking and noticing different things. It's phenomenal. I think it just brings us in line with some of the powerhouses, hopefully, of modern football.
So I'm sure there's a lot of people thinking, why Everton? Right? What is it that made Everton do what we think is actually obviously really smart? The elite clubs National League, the best clubs in America now having a direct competition with the Premier League clubs in England and the UK. Why was Everton willing and open to do this in such a formal, big way to open your home, Finch Farms, which, everybody in soccer knows the name Finch Farm, because of the history of the players that have developed through there. But what was it about Everton that said, "Hey, this is something we want to do," and why hadn't? And maybe you can speculate, but why Everton now, and why other clubs haven't done this in the past?
Um, Obviously, I've had a huge part to play in this because it was something that I was really keen and instrumental in trying to deliver. Because I just see the value of it for everybody. I see the value of it from a footballing perspective. Boys and girls from both sides, as we spoke about earlier in the podcast. But also, I think me knowing the level of play and the aspirations of teams in the US, I just wanted to be able to one highlight to the UK and certainly us as a club what else is out there. We've got US owners, so they're going to want to have some presence in the US, and I thought, what better way than bringing over some of the best teams in the country to come and be part of Finch Farm, be part of Everton. And from the other way, because we talk about pathways and exit routes, there's a small percentage of kids that go on and have careers. So if we can highlight to some of the kids within, the English teams, the level of play in the US, they might finish their footballing career not getting a contract. They might want to go to college, or might want to, go and play in the USL or in the MLS if they can get in there or whatever. So I think it was really important to showcase that. And I think the club, if the club thinks something's good is going to come from it in terms of a player experience, then that's why they're called the People's Club. Like they're very much, if it's good for the players and it's good experience for the kids, then we'll do it. We were talking to John, who's the head of estates, and we were talking about there's two entrances into Finch Farm, and one's like a back entrance where like they come in the side gate and you can come, past not past security the other way, and the other one's through security, which we drove through, and we sat there and I could see him sort of pondering, and he said, "So if we're not going to put these in, because that's where the buses park." So he said, "Look, he said if we're doing this, these guys need to see the best of what we can give them." So we want them to go away and have had the best experience of Everton and Finch Farm. He said they're coming in the front gate, however difficult that is in terms of logistics and buses and whatever. He said they're going to get the best of the experience. So I think that has a huge part to play as well. Like the club does want to do good things for people, and if people are committing to coming from the other side of the world, I think the club wants to give them the absolute best experience they can get whilst they're with us. So I think there's a lot of things. The culture of the club is huge. I think it aligns with the culture that you guys have as an organisation. And I think that were the two things that probably brought it together and made it happen quite easily, really, in the end. It's not easy to get clubs to open up their facilities for people, as you well know. You're not going to walk into many other front doors and have the facility for a week. You're just not. That's the nuts and bolts of it. But we wanted it to happen. And if you want to make something happen, there's always a way. So we got there in the end. So we're super excited.
Well, like I said, I think Everton has risen to the top of our Premier League fan list, and you guys certainly rolled out the red carpet. Sorry, the blue carpet. You rolled out the blue carpet.
I like what you did there. Good catch.
See what I did? See what I did?
Done.
When we came over there, and we're exceptionally excited about the opportunity for our players and teams in our league to go over there and have some unbelievable games in an unbelievable environment, meet some people, and be immersed in the football culture of Northwest England. And so, thank you for all your work on it. I know
My
it wouldn't
pleasure.
happen without you, and obviously the club's foresight and openness is a big piece of it, but there's got to be a champion to get things pushed across the line. So we appreciate you, and of course the Magnus and David and the guys at Coach's Voice who've also helped in making this possible.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. It's a pleasure.
we have it now a tradition on this show where we ask a question at the end. So prepare yourself. Sometimes it can be, it's called the Bracken Brain Buster, which is a real
I'm nervous now, Doug. I'm
which is a real
nervous.
genius name that Dean Lincoln came up with. So prepare yourself. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll lay it on you here. Mark Pro, did you know ECNL provides free recovery sessions? ECNL has partnered with Mark Pro, a staple for recovery in professional sports. Mark Pro is a unique, safe, portable e-stim device that feeds sore muscles and removes metabolic waste. Stop by the recovery zone during your next event. The ECNL is pleased to have Quick Goal as the official goal provider and partner for ECNL Girls and ECNL Boys, a partnership that supports the growth and development of the country's top players, clubs, and coaches. At all national events, including national playoffs and national finals, the Quick Goal Coaches Corner provides hospitality and social space for ECNL girls, ECNL boys, and collegiate coaches. Quick Goal is also the presenting sponsor of the national championship winning ECNL Girls and ECNL Boys Coaches of the Year, as well as the ECNL Girls and ECNL Boys Goals of the Year. Quick Goal continues to help the ECNL elevate the standards of youth soccer and create more opportunities for players on and off the field. Score big with Continental Tire. Prioritize your safety on the road with our thoroughly tested tires for top-notch traction, handling, and durability. Drive with confidence. Find your dealer at continentaltire.com. Continental Tire, the smart choice in tires. All right, here we go. Jacob, I hope you can answer this question, my friend. I hope you can answer this question.
Me too.
We're gonna let Mark go first, and he's probably gonna have the best answer. But today's question is, what is your best soccer, football, if you will, game experience as a fan? Best soccer game experience as a fan. Probably need to be there. Probably have to see it live. What do you got?
Live, Eric Cantona, Man United against Norwich City, away at Norwich, Carrow Road, got sent off for stamping on a plot.
Hasn't I lost his temper? What?
Yeah. Do you know what? Because I was involved in such intense youth football as a kid, I didn't watch loads of games. I think the '99 Champions League final was something special to witness as a Man United supporter, half and half, obviously with Everton. That was some.
Better be careful.
Smart.
That was something special to witness that. And actually met Ole Gunnar Solskjaer a couple of weeks ago at the Everton Tottenham game. So that was pretty cool. So I think as a fan, not live, but I would say that game, the '99 final when they came back and beat Bayern in the last couple of minutes.
How did Eric Cantona and Roy Keane play in the same team? So it's one of the miracles of
very carefully managed rondos.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right,
There's
Christian.
definitely some aggression there.
Yeah, Christian, you're up. Best soccer game experience as a fan.
Well, I suppose I did a trip in 2016-ish, I think it was. It was sort of a tour of Spain when U.S. Club Soccer was working with La Liga. Similar to Mark, my 50% other, supported league. And we had the ability to see not only just the youth setups of a lot of clubs from, the big three to, clubs you hadn't heard of that develop players that move on, but we saw a Champions League game at the Bernabeu We saw a Europa League game at St. Mamas, which is Athletic Bilbao's stadium, and we finished with a La Liga match of Barcelona, and this was Barcelona in its heyday. And of course, Messi scored on a free kick, and we were sitting right around 20 yards from the end line on the goal that was scored, and that was back in the absolute peak of Barcelona quality and style. So it was a pretty special 10 days.
All right. Love that. Jacob Bourne.
So I'm going to give two honorable mentions here. One was watching the John Brooks goal against Ghana in the 2014 World Cup at Ballpark Village in St. Louis. That's probably one of the best experiences watching it on TV. And then when I worked for the Union, I saw CJ Sapong score a hat trick against Red Bulls, which was the first hat trick in Philadelphia Union history. So that was pretty cool. But my favorite moment has been STLFC, which used to be USL 1. They overcame a 2-goal deficit in the final 10 minutes to beat Charleston Battery 3-2, including a last second goal. Like they scored the goal and then the game ended. And so the fans came on the field and the team celebrated in the supporter section. So that was one of the coolest soccer moments I had in a stadium of 2,000 people just going nuts for a lower division team.
Very nice. All right, I'm gonna take the Jacob route and have a couple honorable mentions. One would be Everton versus Leicester at Goodison Park, raining sideways. It was the day that I had my first full English breakfast, which was something to remember. And young Wayne Rooney, came on and scored the game winner after Les Ferdinand had scored for Leicester City. Great game. Absolutely electric, but it was raining sideways. And then I would say my son, and just being able to go with my sons, we went to a Liverpool game. I won't say we are or not Liverpool fans, but we definitely love Everton as well. But having the opportunity to just go with them and my wife to see a Liverpool game was a great experience. They played Brentford. It wasn't a particularly great game, but just a great experience. Best game as a fan ever. Believe it or not, U.S.-Mexico World Cup qualifier in Cincinnati, TQL Stadium. The place was a madhouse. 2-0. Once again, the U.S. beat Mexico 2-0, and the place was absolutely rocking. So that was good. So that's my best ever. Although, Christian, Sunday, November 23rd, FC Cincinnati against Inter Miami in Cincinnati against Messi. I'm going to be there, baby. I'm going to be there. That'll be a good one. So we'll see. I might have a new list. List.
We'll wrap that with we're super excited about the first ever international tournament partnership with Coach's Voice in association with Everton. Really appreciative of your work to make it happen, Mark. It is happening end of May. 2-day tournament for the boys, 2-day tournament for the girls. The best of America against the best of England. That'll be the tagline we're going to go with, because I think it seems pretty accurate. And hopefully this will be the beginning of a long relationship and connection with Everton, and with connecting the rich history of UK and English soccer with the up and coming Americans who we're hosting the World Cup here soon, and hopefully will be upcoming and then some in 2026.
Yeah, we're super excited as well to have you guys over. We've got a nice landing page on the website if anyone wants to head over and take a look. Loads of cool features, a little countdown on there, and once we get announcing some of the teams that we're going to be playing against, we're going to try and do them probably weekly leading up to Christmas and make a bit of fun of it. So yeah, head over and have a look at the landing page. Some really cool content on there, ECNL content and some Everton content as well. So yeah, we're super excited and can't wait to have you.
All right, Mark, thanks for joining us, and thank you out there, everybody. We'll see you in 2 weeks.